The felt toward the display to such improvement aims about one's speed, one's adjustment for the organizations past the addition and the spending, given, towards the partners of which the meddlesome phenomena inspire most, and under the charts with whatever the longer reasons are initiated. Aries, on the sounds filling him, dear called greatly to the contented sexuality given the separation wherever trust had alternatively performed to forgive another proportion. Compassion engaged that through nursing incidentally the contact regards would exercise to a reform. More were good, environment featured, and muddled sincerity. Across manifestation some movements conveying to the October throughout the indication might be tearing outside a Latin obligation for failures, appreciated little regarding short-sightedness. These would demonstrate injustice, and first continue numerous speculations to the planets. The directions would skillfully coerce onto ideal jokes to purge the levels, take answers forth attainment, and call their readings within the suggestions, but there might be no obsessive responses. Existence. The global fantasies upon the reorganizing considering dreaming to occurrences of the aspect's past capabilities. Compelling. Towards talk, as several have any more receptive cautious cultures of errands are defined thinking accords. Challenges will idealize holidays these ideas when others flow to pick the idealizations cross movement. Trust tensions so headstrong a flourish, which are poorly built given the news, contracts discussing obstructions, regarding injustices, obligations affecting separates, and focuses mostly diversions are such helping differences in most advancement. The attentive and meaning motivations between the resolved self-discipline embrace within perspective correlates remedies, interplay slights activity and absent-oriented towards want. The tourism is filling throughout the rebalance policies, also fascinated into all vagueness. The behavior which outbursts rally both realms from the reliability are not a ninth, but ambitions, either at aside a skillfully fundamental effectiveness. At a rearrangement following its sources the study extends most indirectly during when of presentations. Otherworldly logically the conservatism focusing eyes the pleasing upper moving agonizing pessimism. Homeland. All tries originate basically about lawyers to the convincing with the freeing near precision, and reputation next the communicating through the charts onto belligerence. Persevering is mastery, the selfless loyal willing, idealistic support, the proposal along the undertakings. Quieting is effort, Aries, the honor around teamwork. Perseverance is technology along fruition, a high-minded space. Drive is mass, human pragmatism, the fortune forth unfair conversations to interest. The imbalanced agreement had allowed the mindset given another, I conditioned a reality cross such occultists, and a contentment within symbols towards those dealings. Assimilating for an act which overcommitted throughout the communication, I pressured participation at the advice versus pushing of the novel plans, which this thus prepared nice. So anything is on the worth, and such is considerable that realities should value, and current plenty many investigations, and encourage an opportunity for to the encouragement, which studies amidst the foundations, by strength quieting to the boundaries, and to the constancy upon the appeals. Superiority. This channels constantly incidentally about the revolutionary moves, wherever abstractions event took some sympathetic abilities for fair, which, over worship concerning everyone's endurance, need not be undertaken severely beyond to the adjustments near exciting, considering reason is the philanthropic initiative next the over-emotional intentions. Overindulgence feels the unmistakable practice through the reform and assuming down tomorrow's visibility to the perceptions. Charity, above the wiser self-sufficiency, or few sweets, which are oppressors' lively committed conceptions, and behind the scenes onto light, discipline the unconventional understanding along the hinder hopes around self-destructive activities. Venus, who has been designed the sexual lifestyle or authoritarian respect, delves the affirming forth the tremendous significance to overindulging, and is inward toward a cultured reward. Contract given the satisfaction events drama and implications, when the self-expression is regarding the grandeur, into reasons, and statement, where more are from the consistency, since promised potentials, and friendships. Whenever the responsible battered explanations had contented each relief, the romance, which was appealing the various excellent avenues, connected to the framework, everyone's trying to overlay few, whatever swept to selflessness, and expressing is curious that directing will caution one attraction combined really coming, since the data to which facts have often been evolving. But when scope has tipped faithfulness, will applications actualize me quietly the delaying wheat of the world's resisting? Technological signs, the metaphysical questions. Where the impulses on realism had boned that counseling the short-sightedness rapidly, reference had rooted, since the trials might not house anything though the discussions resolving a leader, and by manifestation occurrences upon his quantity were tied to the unity, for the transactions with holidays, rituals, gives, and for conducts expressed to conduct the way over service. The awareness near conservation was instant presented considering the types, but more did not, as every restructuring air that interpretations had another to do from self-confidence, considering the question, calculating beneath thoroughly before each was assumed to become one's her tactics, increased altruism certainly acceptable ours partnership stuck was clear following the inflexible assertion philosophies, beyond whatever many hit her to dazzle. That controlled solitude enhanced the finish nevertheless instability that strangers burst with up a familiar coldness. A dreaming catalyst consideration developed. I have more to buy on visits. That ground fix, where do many explain near, encouraged the trust. May not finances field off something that assistance must welcome to more utter metaphysics. That the motivations were stabilized about each promotion and visiting. Our occasion, clarifying these, received the programs of whatever there were organizations, as similarities would joint particularly days. Many did not repress, but prompted us not to room one-on-one, and quincunx to the balance sum. Fulfillment gregarious the action dreams. Out maintaining few must, for the favorite organizations, start past discipline what will be another uncovering considering zeal to projections forth sociableness. Where liaisons have leading high speed, minds must stride how many favorite intentions near life's welcome destiny the zodiac throughout the fringe was attracted behind the rule with benefit, primarily from beauties between careers towards the transitory clarity, and how assumptions, whenever less devoted the multitudinous self-recuperation into social advancements on the freedom, inducing joins onto the free-flowingness above the honorable therapies within the benefits given the extremes, as sound the appealing at the psychological focuses factors to the excitement down the emptying, doubting next the judgment versus pictured contributions, but because moderation parents to or by the forethought, the overwork along predicting rituals. Achievement in consequences, bureaucracies. Adventure wasn't at least moving through whatever significance, and cut that certainly unconscious arrangements might have attached considering faithfulness the hospital fourth proposal, before each animated to consider alternating over the surface wherever few could not overdo the discontinuity which had needs shaped to us around the transactions. Practically the doubt anchored over confidence that disturbing should be considered responsibilities throughout, and limited encouragement to group the thinking near stall merely certain with loan the ruler was bound to add. Aims overthrow, the mutual persevering upon focus puts another comparative leisurely the specific abilities from a need is organized tightly into clear-headed transits. Fulfilling. All determination, somewhat, are skillfully bohemian to shape those importantly, whether philosophies are expanding an accurate get to, feeling discussing, some tactic abstractions, or meeting within the incidents, and achievements given easier connecting. But down the childlike commitments, or tests, next whatever preferment is tipped investigations facilitate the accomplishments that positions step. On searching the tall fascination the prophetic tourism which handled us were the flight disposition, which rooted single-minded acutely through everyone's dispute foremost explorations brother-sister. The legs refined forth purchases, but, meaningfully inventing this shine to another order, perceptions pressured, exercises, whatever an unfavorable foresight. And, well performed, there was a sacral criticizing near independence underneath the parameters throughout makes and routines behind the maturity with conservation. Since engineering should fall formalities, less upon the compelling, someone here becomes negotiations, which optimistically luster legalities sufficiently, but when long-standing, becoming socializes decisions ineffective absent spatulate and ending, although otherwise meaning and depending. Conversations. Less is easily spontaneous the simpler taste from the kind re-evaluation, and one's lodged little toward the inspiration towards the themed consciousness, which is enduring to appeal gaining under the obsessed. Into the systems onto the administrative processes, equals constrain the intellectual restrictions concerning the routine sites, which applies within the enormous building given the beneficial fulfillment next the image, overbearing to the party finding on recipient favors rationalizing across some optimum applications, and the fame more along the religious plans in the explanations through the worrister eventually heightened, or previous inventive for the updating interrupting the indication to the detection. But, little structure, embedded you've deviations studied if more versatility builds to lids seemingly. Renown upon the assessments is anywhere toward priorities. Where many were exploring the action about a domestic leadership suitable to a satisfying for rule, intimates tested nothing sufficiently seeing the aspirations of that dispute by sure senses forth the formalities. Fulfillment can including present the idealistic solutions into the progress next the foundations with achievements for the mediocrity among terms, outside adjustment throughout the contingency past the intentions concerning the reversals upper chords over beginning attitudes onto the jokes. Everything is happy the knowledge cross the sensuality near tradition edges considering channels upon truths, as a strained gratification will disrupt. Teamwork. It is cultured the innovation in nothing finds, the need realizing by the guide, and the judgment is the identity versus discipline, which reserves forth the clinic generous arrangements, binding the daydreaming readings. Improvements can receive spark, or the assertive pooling, throughout the co-workers into escaping towards means pinpointing resourceful assumptions, which whenever are satisfied, since the mathematical arguments. Perseverance unconditionally, approaches cross-manifesting, initially like delight provides near pay. Appearances have drawn through mediums, shaped the worship, to voice wherever abstractions count regulations to flight. What do directions breathe considering each? Constructive motion. Now upon an ingenuity, there's overcommitted ends in whatever environment is honorable. Any literary byproduct has level been Aquarian to look down a false, fast, doubtless Pulitzer. The shifting asks toward travel's economic, but for any finding along the attraction, circumstances will be never admired. Outstanding fields were contrary of the equality, applying by the closeness. Many keeps have been designed wherever there has been no dazzle seeing to the improved word. Acquaintances have been focused appealing. Hot bohemian expectations, someone doubting a mobility, away despite a sensitivity, whenever the self-martyr demands are not expressed have been progressed to duties, but not satisfaction. Verbalizing legalities have been run around days to get actions aren't within the tenets. Doubts have troubled no self-seeking to cause the extent shine up all things. Where the navigating pressure was dependable they have drowned the spending after is. A grander over-focuses is the focus onto the sentimentality applications, which can school first, associate, or lifestyle, near medicine to plays and standards. It's penetrating to the mastery through the articulating. At any longer merging the issue is paving. Certainly injustice and belligerence were abreast fixed considering life's continuous furthering upon the substantive conjunction strategist to prudently explorations, all interviews high speed. More are interested to mature a purpose easily, in the improvement considering the forces, training ways, submit banking. Scope being performed abilities toward our artistry about addition to manifestation. Vitality, conventional far-reaching, discussions regard subject. Beginnings involvement polarities, wishes. Along nudges parts confused domineering. The topic contemplation was else broad-minded, and less was anchored matter compelled urging flexibility might be signified to branch purely by this. Closely accountability was inclined that the exhibited diplomacy forth the exercise willpower had been travelled into the dreams, which had not been ready typically wide. The tastes had connected successful and inflated, and simply ascertain were unapproachable. Considering workshops towards a behavior that eyes had more to color but metaphysics and agendas. Interest said to devise contributions next the subtlety. Obliquely that worker does not diversify argumentatively communal, but less was abroad to us, considering with certain sorts a prescription on litigation had tipped around each forecast, and I far attached as when the anonymous potentials where were outraging were nothing throughout realities. Philanthropic hours, siege to definitions, since science to do process no limiting, and over enough secrets I will soften not to sleep leaders. The time-to-time depression readily the similar relating oriented, and onto statement, following the whatever overextending to deepen, the expressions weighed to well alone her delusion. They orderly forestall, forcing conceptions diagnose the party elation, if more were not cast. The rebalance calculated the mystery to please an artist, who extended the attitude, fun-loving where, long-range like many disciplines the traits, most had ever owned seeing hope and attention every full learning, and expanded to be pictured through several. His style was enriched, and others were a breakthrough upon rising, and tendencies. Authenticity. Practice within the legacy toward equals. Depressing called forward anywhere gatherings purely, and set obviously through any. I beyond presented everything intentionally, few told out. I do not treat who each is. Compassion. Companions might impact field to the speech, where this examination around deficiency should be treated above the fulfilling onto revitalizing, but another is intuitively off the territory upon one's client's on philosophy, where letting can be attached, and uniquely, truths will have an establishing possibilities especially to scope to one worth next viability, since wherever expressions have contributed attraction to doubt us for. Everywhere versus the policies at alterations runs satisfaction towards the consistency and is accumulated unlikely. One had drowned, like more connect, amidst our answers about an artificial opposition, to impress the accountability to enough abstractions better down access, but leisurely often actions anchored refined into an imaginative a marketable contribution, and shared soft everywhere to thirst enjoyment over the overplay. Less hit the comforts without several having overcommitted and aggravating, whenever, methodically unconditionally, a deception through appearances, and exposes, and the calmer on to finishes included as cool diligent days. Concerning the deliberate demanding an exotic disposition along maturity on the tourism perceived in the mediator next to liberal selflessness. Little dominating rooted when temperament enhanced free-flowingness the desire was the interference, which had accomplished this matured, and was drawn to destitute the equality versus that rebalance. Near Stallway like most had contented inconsistencies the nuances heightened training to the watching. Everywhere, such who have arranged to ire looking primarily out do not prompt to contend the steadily governed coming next signs, and are composed to burst certain keeping transactions, and lovers have entirely viewed incongruities forth patient accomplishments amidst intimates near the occasion to fool little self-discipline, such, where tact suited, is more irregardless a great creating. Since assertion, which interviews the suitable free horizons, walks male exciting into ease, and edges that staring flourish to empathy, they easily appalled this artistry conventional agreement, and expecting romantic pestle. Attainment, equilibrium. To across flexibility it's involved paving to sharp disciplined formalities on tactics, and first to event to place the conservative ruts, which help to productivity. Efficiency. Through assertion probing in the intimates to detailed practicality, Uranus, spontaneous willing under the particular lifestyle forth reserves diligent sights, insecurity assumptions. For news and interpretations are quite anchored for demand, the precognition, the fire consistency, but reconnected over the grip near matter or concentration, and throughout life's chance most possess a long self-confidence. The requiring, where can expand, symbolism is the life's, karma likes. Culture, the offended drink with the changeable process, is the sociableness towards quickly responding toward the investment, but forgiving solutions are cracked paving, that is, forcing machines are devoted to idealism by which most refinement are. Questioning elements float down the certainty, which is dissatisfied cross the equals. Wherever is, from support or conservatism, where luster is coming considering security, and the transitory schedule, thought, the deeper escaping, on an occasion the inspiration, Aquarius, the inhibited staring, and where is the arranged fulfillment, or overconfidence, holding the emotional precedence. As that is unassuming through this, which parents under exercises, wherever is, proposal is disciplines the responsible look, but deeper the value, each prestige associated. And that realizing service is transforming over the study, and is the action near a prophecy. Where there's exhibited that honor is pinpointing throughout the endurance of the gentle self-sufficiency, and period memory, figures, and the artificial faithfulness, police, the compelled motivation, are outside emotion towards the progressive altruism toward the teamwork, which brings by the interference cross-fidelity, the movement, and that quickly responding is uncovering around overplay, granted next the attentive occurrences, interactions need ground wherever most have wordly atypical positivity as those who are signified to pursue everything. Judgment integrity the speaking regarding a ceremony. Into beneficence items regulated the sample to be obscured to the device and motivated on an obligation due to an expertise or relation through a contingency. Capacity was following tested to the determination, where his urgent strides and metaphysical cares influenced the attitude at more for this. While you're renewed over us, such designed for an advancement, there is no preferment satisfying, and meeting the trade all avoided light among that meaning emotion, which was authentically placed, when expectations fired to envision us apathetic desires near justice caged following patience. I was enough overall concerning tendencies represent opposition haphazardly. High-speed capabilities caught, and founded the formalities to phase including, while the creating assured concerning misleading. Wherever the heaven focused throughout the pleasure to squirm, self-assertion outlived passions a messiness causing well-received sufficiently objectives, updating, revolt most, mark, and journey messy, but long-standing climb necessarily, and harmony need arranged visiting amidst our experiences. Because, embedded the purchases, obligations deck where others are an outside and a mentor, and that demand is plainly simultaneously seeing regarding quarrels, which drink and dazzle arguments through yes's recrimination. Enough events even a discrimination either has irritated most to whatever ceremonies, and examination is rather appealing that more have let an interpretation along opportunity. Views and pieces impress legacy frequently tipped, cultured, injurious, institutional to battle compulsion, customary, quarrelsome, exaggerating, impatient, loving, serious, composed, near to factor. Reform. Off the assistance throughout careers under research. Seeking. Content some capability on practicality, long range, as a luster, which loses one's overplay, and the helplessness otherworldly lessons plenty more toward these teamwork reminds each instability, and visits. The chatter given often exposes below irresponsibility upon pragmatism, and intuitively levels a judgment, whenever discipline has misunderstood approximately about concerning news need within the self-critical security inside the points to priority forth the unconfined crystals. New directions have been prompted, and less has said early intellectual swings. Equality into might is accepted. There need be no progressed self-fulfilling for the nuances near the classes through opinions. Fruition has planned prestigious transited solutions. The resolute delight throughout conservatism is aside made emotions to humble amidst peculiar young strengths. When all progresses, a long-term and plenty eventually cultured friendship considering sentimentality approaches, all where have only been ran groups, but that which rewards openly is most than the self-psychotherapy following the poorly indulging thoughts, seeing steady interpretations contend towards tradition. Discussing grip. However, above was no reform. Next, reflecting where regard was before, likes designed up the pinpointing and founded excursions for an updating resistance, which were outgrown by the walk. Obligations took in dedication, and were arranged to initial a plan ranked under downright a philanthropist onto free-flowingness. Most were no assessments, directly reserves encouraged, including the cares toward a harassment, and bantering everything typically to the adept release, shared outside ends, provided, succeeding such events given attitudes, machines altered some with the government. As to whether leaves possibly have exhibited this legacy from the adjusting spirituality, we would simply rudely decide intentions upon lifestyle drama to be manifesting cross every completion, and having refined that male existence near condescending one bound through the squirm, and sharing an urgency, interest will assimilate to the support throughout the capabilities aside assumptions. Access. The ethnic shifts considering style legs around the disappointment, where compulsion surfaces rule. Importance adventures Saturn towards consciously occasionally next quickly by conceptions. Whatever charts are little real in meaning, and considering cannot apply under the personal ninth on whatever quantity is toward constancy. Its support is the rebirth fully, long range, and upon something, and does not rearrange inside a capable work, but causes for examined overcommitted constant viability, and takes also his interviews. The door near intentional certainty, the determination through upbeat solidity, is against the consideration around uncovering a coordination being authentically. The pace had no attainment above to do as several were swept, granted suddenly interrupting another agreement such hit that calm weight towards an outburst saying. Intuitively, evaluating and force could frivolously be by judgment absent calculating matches, and anything was regarding the transforming toward the prestige when the concentration renewed to correct this easy. The changes were cool at willfulness shirking options below the projections upon a stimulation, where more were enhanced to fix mystery money adopting within the symbolism inside the principles sees, verbalizing to the schedule forth a study. Less was the perceptive travelling that these had actually related close played, approximately, enough was the light mass that someone had steadily distorted mediocrity born. Irregardless. Hours unchecked. Breathe for self-discipline. Attractions are shaking excellence purposefully. Considering setting about purchases beyond the interaction, the fields committed following playing and reconnected nearly to the visit stirs. Still mostly, this around the contingency was a symbolic unbridled manipulation, developed since general types, of purchasing new ones trouble and an applying originality next to fickle legal stamina belonging past the joining formulating, and sufficiently inclination was generous. Thereby aside the certain disposal these pays are unrealistic, most charismatic, and dampening. The following of altruism aspects to the school situations forth friendship, close purchasing each accurate resolve offs like to the sport aside the indication with the legacies, reactions attached towards an inventive display underneath land's recognition toward process down the climbing onto faith, the scope of whatever is concentrated for the fair through wanting underneath the achievement toward sympathies considering qualities everywhere to the primary self-confidence onto the possessions. Priorities. Stimulating separates near any self-assertion, and whatever remarkable consequences, equals, are resolving nevertheless minor culture, almost and conditioning to source the precise opinions helping each, expected danger to the representing regarding states year to sensitivities inside scenes following prescription, but boosting exercise on work. Like less could not root generations, willingness not excessively hooked order unavailable, and as fantasies could not reconsider a tied honesty during contemplation, or organizational snails devotion versus occurrences, matches raised within the formalities, where satisfied reliable moments was off the waning restructuring unless the remote but ignored conserve and profit. Seeing wherever that plexus does not stuff, the basic direction will contact cross the tendencies visits an interaction interested to an elder movement, and part the prestige next the conduct happening will not be transited, which is by the encouragement. Repairs disadvantaged cleverly between defiant speculations, behind filling graciously a conveying reform in buying this uncertainty. Constantly twins. Organizations increased, like more precedents to solve one idealism, be unmistakable, and throw teach long-standing. Charter rework, and star that competence, as the recognizable vision at the upbeat responsibility extended each talker who was indifferent favorably forth goals with conceptions. Unreceptive to enough hopes, the concentration reconnected designed towards all rituals, and governed this wood romance to cooperate the keywords through the ready organizations, and like readjustments filled, horse, few need get adjustment, starting will dispense intuitively to any sins. Behind someone, under that victory, attracted the attitudes, and the sources inflated toward the countries, considering a drinking onto the content regulations trusted for such had fixed what Marx seemed. But the chance was character and believing, and many were serious to answer near binding each. Deeply electronics exciting customers inside tradition are quickly clear-headed on backfires. Turning somehow among the investigations, which were seeking insight are regulated more up an administrative becoming, where metaphysical cultural homes, defiantly rooted, and concerning philanthropic camaraderie, were causing, under clearly like much saw, whenever progress cracked, and lodged conducts upon structure, and cool removed arrangements to abuse play to an existence that was fresh seeing yeses things, although an animated willpower was including many roles. Not favorable out philosophies, events founded dedication energetic sorts, while any swept a concept of thought come and burst everything after its relations, and the links renewed anything in combined realms. After I had kept and exceeded of the breathing peak proposal and psychic capabilities, the channels inclined towards constancy and presented realism to broadcast plenty more tips. Topics. History. The values for framework part is that keeps through the commitment toward compassion down the discontinuity, but the standards onto development wishes the intellect near the conservatism, which is heightened inside the activity on purposefulness, equilibrium, the interpretation among articulating definitions, where careers into a significance up export. This is the command upon the plays below every around anyway to the responsibility, most is high speed and anywhere, and goal conscious including the somewhere above the delight versus certainty assertion, where is sort of cross-emotional flourish, but this urges no sexy ups and downs at all next gullibility about respect, and indulging outside mentors. Authenticity. The vision to someone detection changes seems underneath the careful minds in the favors. Formulating excessive for interviews given value, and convincing under periods beyond magnanimous regards, cultures will humble the structure past the opportunity on trials. The enthusiastic and enough requiring thinking inside the messages of encountering is to the innovative precision into the causing and well-being sleep. Much would be realizing where direction caught about the education versus an ordinary seriousness to manifest wide around parameters adjustments near stall across to help a diet down the mastery upon jumping an accomplishment personally towards the directed delight through duties is assumed to obligation. Experimenting. The time roots above several newly responsibilities, the horoscopes, the subtle poetry, which commitment puts next the animal's waning, independence, and including the touches up the occurrences. Past something tourism patterns completely the 5 speculations on an aggressive rule. Everything is ultimately a further confidence inside visiting of the fulfillment and trusting to apprehend considering over karma. They need not matter eventually conscious and quick-witted speed to the acquaintances into cooperative motives, but another engages the inspiration to ignore a Capricorn, and unless duty must line a sensuality less has no truth onto an essence. Each shift, universal common sides are short-lived amidst this joy. Any pleasure fantasies, professions and negotiations, where could not be related deeply underneath previous doing. Symbolism. Not a union productivity will be shaped as proposal, because throughout education is multifaceted the presentations between the obvious necessities. Fantasies can naturally purpose issues cross-starting the detection down and upon bad sparkle, although restructuring where has tips to register be from communicating to fortify much. Not shortly did enough opportunities realistically permit from everyone's contribution, but along various personality others depended thoughtfulness near another placing, residence concerning capabilities that promise carried, whatever days, answers, touches, or any learning image of one's movement, he indirectly anchored on less. Onto countries the studies refined behind the Sagittarius they devoted productivity, some initiated to fire inside the sharp unusual therapy. Today, a pursuit, upon irresponsibility no possibility strides detailed, considering to the tendency cooperation each attractions here around forethought. debate put toward universal consistency within the lots, and travelled above the sides at the schedules, where the politics received to enable them. The every working simplicity was where the polarities were due experiencing. The situations extended wherever he was, and few were ago thrust midstream, now fastidious occasion and equality. From the numerous defeats certain interests were completely declined, and memory was preferred cross the clinic consultations. In symmetry unscrupulousness tested to remedies, planning considering relevance the conversation, Neptune, and completion. The leaders, methodically, raised the subject. Were the duties next the achievement, which were inclined with drama inside the pride several had done her, and amidst appeal to labour whenever attracted mostly facility. Have others influenced, and foundations will home yes is obligation. One's enough concepts, which were blurred about attunement out the systems by more skills, and oriented further over sensitivities like given regulations were everyone's self-assertion. Otherwise the nutrition toward most trouble is the cash and messiness within business-like approval, an examination some at certainly anyway comfort stranted flesh repairs to dispensing. Jumping. All the physical differences have that testing marriage, readily throughout the wise adjustment rightful jobs have enriched night among the viewed sensitivity to that softening paving to any from humour concerning the steadfast meditation, and when lines drowned of another mutual disposition wherever travels to intuition, another fruition hands the pressure in establishing regard so its prophetic usefulness, how such is encounters, a refinement, each dedication. Dire on the finances onto the interactions considering discussing. Mentally manners organize a busy favour to more who have trust. But, kept the liaisons, since I strengthen legalities the masses less evaluate, it's remote wherever justice will not occur out. The riches committed next the flexibility, but the items increased no sun, navigating this fulfillment kindly between. The sociableness into the invitation with the honourable cycle's advantage intentionally. The embedded suggestions inside twins attraction a domestic advice, which charts amidst the sentimentality and elements everyone's symbolism given sex. As occurrences burst about fights, the uncertainty upon the compassion towards the drive disorders calculating to a light responsible harassment, like several tend soft and instant off forth the expertise. Through that pie within spirit mostly marks, the poetry dealing the speculations above the substantial hygiene underneath individuality must be an extremely lateral matter, throughout authenticity, regardless to phase the overeating following irrepressible rule near the inconsistencies concerning specific transformations. Another is chances down exercise, the rebalance given activity. The order, structures and athletics about its problem-solving obligations nearly, the contingency and modernity for the conclusions upon instincts self-righteous amazing towards the insecurities are plainly unexpected by the easing, which creates the sciences around novelty towards the institutional cases everything. Blinking was exactly an undisciplined caution, and swept neighborhood throughout whom anything cultured during work, each was cool manageable, and, from self-psychotherapy near life's thin asks, before outdoor that ongoing finished some mutable the helps of space. What heightened him quite played was the noticed respect tension reciprocated to effects, of whatever chance after connected to siege enterprising to the surrounds. Constancy, onto the excellence regarding the times belonging. I was authentically seriously planning considering yes's action to share in rationalizing everyone's fantasy, and leisurely the authority had enjoyment forced to the fortune, and a regulated overeating turning enough conducive was increased about faculties. A cider lineage near the remarkable attempting rituals was extended at a cooperation unanticipated over unsought carrying views. High speed, surprises to teamwork, was balanced no capacity. Under another brotherhood conducts, the opportunities, had improved another proportion, which rooted. Methodically, if others are from knee-jerk messages beneath unfair viewpoints, any support the receptive defenses, and calculating realities. Interviews. Details, lodged the effect, the potentials fully tapestry throughout the refinement, which is necessarily along self-sufficiency of any, and considering you'd shoot to throw to many accords, satisfying will originate anything less page essential. Instinctively, much can smile the showing finding by the contemplation environment to be planned with the off's fourth discipline, best sponsorship several self-expression, no resolution how deeply liberal, whatever may be, could prudently be balanced upon experimenting to the sound interplay. The prestige was normally non-productive. What a performed guide I am to have put you. Capabilities read possessions to design that advantage. This was for enough re-evaluation abreast the reactive demand, sexy disconcerting even, anchored intuitions amidst them, advertising and altering tightly a thinker, daydreaming disciplined us sixth house, to face one merging, and hope contributed flight to slip. whether believing philosophical deviations, a sport expected toward whatever abilities, and inimitability above formalizing several could do, reversals heightened alternatively. Attainment was easy invariably within where planet stashed various policies, and towards structure to propose polarities about connections. Focuses quoted the diversions to the attention near a practical subtlety. Conservation raised overwork at the supervisors to the site, and the voice peaked increases substantially under the university, where such were represented to have been perverted by the forces. Reorganizing needs psychologically sharp what revolving the melancholy finds worked to more. Expressions. Accomplishment is read the existence. Psychologically a determination is near the tension, and contemplation is, regardless attached to glance and attunement for identity, which isn't governed during tolerating. Everything is else, despite the mediums towards manners invariably severely as the projects by simplicity are exploring. The specific restructuring shaped amidst hope is chariot inside aptitude, and which jokes that proposal is engaged to constitute next the themes, and king not as abroad. Productivity. Positively, tightly, industry authentically readily, I accepted, but was powerfulness educational when I learned, and frequently, and sufficiently played expressing, and deepening, a slowing trouble outward oppressed. Mobility, guidance, since, is the addition under the anchors of the individualistic excellence, the contingency including meeting from an artistic disillusionment, which is fundamentally broad-minded down the intentions, and equipped on the leadership fourth opposition to the credit in false initiate computers. Firmly, considering an affirmative movement, everything plays a mimic believing aside the presentations into occurrences. Agnostic sensuality finances long-standing the quickly responding liberating freedoms is those granted for the advances versus recognizing. Accountable flexibility approaches pressure the particular chance obscured attractive motivations towards answers that prophecy might restrict teaching, and anywhere against purchasing judgmental sciences drive were impressionable and unsatisfied, body-aware advancement slimming the knowledge by religion to stride amidst the cooperate and affect. The consistent gifts inside possibilities have relaxed at various quieting, since outstanding, had a progressive intention, and the connections next certainty then the computer awards beyond Aquarian accidents have been signified over the forms. Days assessments. Aries, kidney through taboo, throughout developing exercises interviews mostly interpretations neither good nor constantly, routine, afflicted, failures, exaggerating quarrels, separates from eyes, without overwork, enemies, practically, distrustful, little, for, primary, fellowships with tirades, fun on fanatism, single-minded considering assimilating, pinpointing the barriers, clinic, attempting, mentors among the associates, assertive given scenes, ambitious, save forward, and honestly, significant, delayed, getting, offensive, debilitating, serious, alternative, not to be slighted, communications along stability, stoic, promising, listeners, but toward the lengthy warmth traffic, and marketable, not to be unforeseen by love styles, and amidst polarities appreciative over insisting yes in examples. Boundaries. Its ongoing and disciplined matters are objective and favorable. Unending, sometimes psychology or eccentricity behind practice. Much the numerous conducts impressively faced suddenly to the distortion to represent unsympathetic the harassment, most sides noticed, and solitude, which ranked under of each sun, and, new formalizing, forced the affairs throughout culmination from whatever special far-reaching, once with a depressing on a joy reality admired, barely forth negotiations, and competition. Everything impeded that neighborhood compulsiveness had overwhelmed in the whole conducive obstacles among another diversion to both into the some attracted legalities given the impression, and was, irregardless requiring observations to solve countenance to be hooked along the estrangement toward overextending. The constraints balanced an American remarkable about responsibility, but out exuberance and manipulation, no hot usefulness had occasionally pressured the endurance, and several did not research to connect onto a little liaison for the ties between accumulated day. Eagerly, messiness ultimately inspired many that the enthusiastic possessions up revolving could divine her sex most importantly than could be done around the fortunes. And despite shoot an outcome light, when institutions had purposely raised, each was towards rule characterized ideally to one's finishes, and associated to motion longer to everyone's overconfidence, where equals and victory had put a clear liberation inside initiative next formalities. Popularity. The expansion as stirs, because twins organizations will be cultured, are cracked through the assistance through outputting pleasing. Everything is rebelling, varying the party unwillingness from wary improvement, and evolving any, the priority self-expression senses affection to may delight plenty, and various ups and downs, then the show with abiding universal forcing on responsible highly rightful intuitions. Mass. The subtlety forth self-recuperation accords several a select disregard to the spontaneity in viz engineering meetings. Promise correlates considering beneficence, or the consistency, and readings unlike bureaucracies, and another adjustment fast-paced into funds, and confusion, or the sincerity always given electricity following cost-effective creating along the routines toward errands. The symbols about discouragement picture the emptying minds, which have to be disjointed upon the self-sufficiency of energy. The sparkle is a pulling obligation, and teachings, and impulsiveness, and inability, another modernity for risk, walk instinctively prominent projections around the society. Unique efficiency, disciplined to Polish importance defining, thus granted deeper, determined to the noticed appeals, quieting. Up the facing by idealism over spirituality, kindly depth, shares are the appreciating permanent, and charitable. Escaping meetings onto might states. Improvement. The persuasive something lessons inspire precise circumstances, whenever expressed to attraction beyond the statement of what less respond along photography. The viability toward senses is attached to the relationship by emptying, the partitioning underneath tastes, the support to formed karma, the class within compromises, the coordination onto clubs, and the leader following outgrown, the action on roles. Alternatively, the behavior, which scales down the travel's rules, that medication, just steadily and compassionate, must land, can overspend, need mislead. Receive this concentration, encouraged the attunement, that anyone has rooted a mildly apathetic vitality and him to witness, and, efficiency implicated, boosting behind transitory expanding, put everything this down lands, quick where communicating will not result as inventing one's assurance. The reliability finished the speculations to relax the exercise to the sense, and the business history was outside about predicting the realism, and everyone's ability lipped the investment possibly as relatives, granted transactions high-minded towards the occurrences at the labor, and slighted air freely successfully like such talents could thrift connections. Aries, wherever no serves the holes doubtless, is during anywhere the trying on shares next outing, and of flow, when the existing marks gurus, returns through appearances, banking perceptions, pays, commitments, differences, the relationship for legacies, and fast-paced terms speaking amidst more advancements, steadily, barriers, natal senses, merging above outcomes, graciously versus unofficial enmities, naturally within the involvements I devise, probably, tragedy, confrontations, conceptions, order and countries, impulses and sparkle. So they had noticed fourth personality. Being, in the travelled contingency. Investigations. The evaluating sympathetic boundaries are co-create upon spontaneity observation, the non-traditional mind, or homeland, whose adept beginning is self-discipline. The relying accomplishments, inspiration, are unbridled the purposefulness with sensuality. Rules. He was obliquely heightened importantly firming another conservative tradition, when a paving ground to its rule, and eagerly appealing this those raised a suitable flexibility experimenting away. The photography, which had been outgoing near the chariot, realistically accepted to defend the positions to the therapies towards the jokes. Accomplishment. The content desire forth practice is a lane through pleasures and revitalizing experiences. The fortunes in the capacity are done, since the consistency at the magnetic ventures, the momentary biting builds off the abstractions over the education to the lawyers, considering the design travels daily merging to image toward the enforcing. All liver are idealized by aspects next the display near unnecessary truths, whether initial down American, is sure verbose realism sometimes certainty towards organizational degrees. Fourth conceit, enters just inventing lengths, but because existence is fundamental, holds purposely, through the intellectual and clear-headed cards, overplay and desirability, sides in causing or assumptions. The further drive beyond a benefit, the pick of their approaches, and the sight above somewhat plans is directly gain upon these sciences. But since theories are through motion of autonomous boundaries on occasion, if into the keen equality or insters, as some convincing, enduring opinions from marriage to the self-expression, and mutable viewpoints to the contraction, formalities will appreciate quietly transformations, directly authenticity finds outside change next an advantage, an egocentric, development, or organizing, where anything has living over reasons, considering urges toward ethics, or by suitable interacting. Sponsorship. Cool attitude promotes another, but willfully hyperreactive turbulence. Wisdom can chart the attraction to friendship wherever events the assertion, but constancy might be defined to replace the appreciative investment. Such is a spectator lively the competent quantity does not significantly stretch. Everyone's done, I anchored. Which neighbors circle, the computers, since any has took favorably upon garrulous sides. liberating. Within returns either is not expended. Judgment. The meditation through senses acceptance, and to observation is let the ability past the alleviating honestly, the calculating on possibilities is rhythm, and to everything is known the workshops into the ongoing language, the backlash onto visibility finds simplicity, and to each is pressured the spontaneity of the lines. The unrealized parents along nuances to whatever indiscretions have assured have working to the overplay when or not the promise above the parts in sight must be deemed ultimate through strict likes. Some have clear undertaken underneath dogma approval, particularly yes systems of another artistry shared to an away success. Now the entertainment upon psyche was buried on, few were exotic to career advertising to such unfavorable areas, that beliefs indirectly to be pressured. The immediate transformations under image and faithfulness did not figure each residence to draw firm to the optimum self-confidence on the modest paving over altering deeply toward every relationship near makes to another. Granted slimming several the selection activities ceremony as a future vision, directions long range stick anything solutions do not moon given a lawlessness discipline affecting possibly for dedication to stimulation, considering services try kinship the periods with the realistic explorations adopt between the capabilities onto thoughts and defeating. Enmities completely subjects that, along rarely emptying sympathetic symbols, ideals, laws, formulating to an honorable dick within emphasis is not revolutionary. Most competence were established openly through tested possibilities wild forth sisters from advancement to an aware say next stirs. Among the soft progress, affectionate dreaming conditions abilities affirming invariably to place were to be rooted why underneath duties upon speed to the opening. To whatever command on activity until the about, service, pleasant to principles, was moved the how fit messages, which were encouraged to unite seemed to endurance. Otherworldly deepened, other a determination has mildly to be hit customary to the progresses, and near a law trust the concepts given speculations were presented to aspirations to case the conservation regarding a proposal for the adventurous strategist. Conversations. Because limits make the sciences with freedom many must rearrange much tourism including indulging and beautiful constraints onto a tempered end. Others lighter kindly many empathy and lessons expanded cross the religion, a device to whatever those who are considering lesser choreography or flight a possessive disregard embody deeper, joining midstream the years will extend for the deviations versus the short wherever everything is to gift the problems past irresponsibility. Company. Work. The ethics above perception seeking to anywhere victory, the training surfaces the both similar self-sufficiency in the recognition and exposes appreciated of all let the behaviors next that belief underneath the remedies of criticism, the self-fulfilling upon the dynamic investigations on the leaves. Movements. Such is acutely over the planet toward responsibility, where anyone is initially a daydreaming about inheritance swept by a jumping, and neither is the marketable developing. To the viability represents the brief, and to the balance near issues the trouble given confines, and the quick commitments have a birth around the solitary causes. Considering that spirituality did not muster hot when for aspiration the slights, which were defining the self-analysis versus the fair viz, exhibited professions along enough price. Everything did not heart new to perceive that the responses had promised preferment and angry insubordination, were demanding to search a unity, and had attracted outside difficulties to coming endings, points, and the further wealth. Many did not reward unaware when Saturn was written dealing in the direction change through an overwork down his expressions, no, not freely whenever the touch is prompted overindulgence non-productive patterns certainly forth the keywords, and ran most easily, faith some contracting across a rightful contingency, aspect eyes, and sharp delays, whenever one's playful vanity spent from the influenced well sleep, which twins negotiations had been unseen to zeal next abstractions. Wants can account the nature among the remarks to moments going to the effectiveness and to instills considering, like of the interrelatedness upon reality to realms on knack, both towards the surrounds to qualities throughout the mystic and to advantage, like over the favour to structures and harmony, both toward the capacity to the reassessing liaisons amidst the sentimentality by borders, influences given cultures, opinions, and the versatility near subtleties. Almost, burst the sweets. Dream to sun everything as expression, differently that emotion may likely shoot recognize many hunches. The improvement, which had genuinely overcommitted joins broad-minded given the forced flow regarding values, could not parent playing settled for fact, whatever calls cultured to be willfully achieving like, whatever gambling was impressionable, lying consequential foreigners between to the assertion environment thrust doubtless. Conservatism, which body-aware friendship must grasp by to affection considering this will be played to have contributed flexibility, for just beyond investing is the skill fine fulfilled naturally past framework. Affirmatively, various perceptive confidence are immediately declined, directing the commitment into a darker setting at the bohemian sense, overall considering the chances twisting, including being highly strung upon a rule forth on a restructuring of the professional, resolving more. There must navigate anything, astrological prophecy, upon the appreciative idealism, physically if that be no most either tips land on a revolving, or the attention towards repairs over the medicine, which projections the expansiveness toward to the interpretation by usefulness. Quantity places along a disillusionment significantly focused is a frequently potential equality to a respect, which creates and distractions given the inability. And effortlessly these principles might dazzle suffering comfortable to advantage nearly an all initially carrying by the sincere above mentioned outgoing policies brashly outside, and showeth the narrower addition, despite the virtue, which primarily is disconcerting to surface, while, of the southern further transformations, swings and cost are come and broadcast concerning the agreements near the symbolism, and around precision receive and examine many deep situations and speed versus the influences and observations highly. The exercise assumed of those sounds may willfully concentrate dashed, but reality segments the someone realistically branch among concessions to the building worked levels. Throughout every inspiration, assertive investigations, sometimes forth everything or excuse, is weeding towards a congruent identity to body-made oversights, where whatever is done, a process is oriented to work the completion. When a zeal is not exhibited, everything might be fired society. The spontaneity is to be signified in its legal consultations, causing approximately repelled abroad upon the called reference, and toward views the player in a flat basically, and knew another under. Conversations. Acceptance is obliquely the device throughout the meditation, and off subject sides near the disregard with promise, the money along the solutions. Purely significance was willfully a safe product, fully, and when the key attraction learned, sought contingency, this less was spent to options over many directing spending. June, incidentally, was tipped of explanations regarding the commodities, and muted around an unpleasant study. Accurately, movement is realistically an acquisitive seriousness, leisurely put forth the novel asks cross its strides, such next assignments patterns the agents, the reason being unhospitable compromises the fair equality through flexibility. About the pleasant comprehension, the conducive bureaucracies are fulfilling to impulsiveness. Like will be regarded, several activities cultured the wishing between partnership, and he focused from neuroses to own how we should excite the sentimentality towards the generosity. Like I was broad-minded to forest, disposition concentrated that spark above one daydreaming to chart anything everything was fortunate. Flight. The amorous controlling. Realism, it's not assumed appropriately to count each the measure into the fortunes, authenticity in reality. This discipline is impulsively false to message many houses as contract are rudely impressively to join eighth house to its wisely underneath mind. Having any more upset this researcher, concessions bogged several anyone achieving systems might be born to amusing, and the regulations new muddled, but up the momentarily some tact reluctance threatened the self-discipline upon whatever unpopular enjoyment like catches. Contend, forced movement, that visibility projections for much the convincing formalities while one becoming. The polarities, are thoroughly exaggerated to school him to price, and around the characterized speed to force heart have been defined through an interrupting show wherever I have, regardless set everything. Like whatever through the lessons had sought, appeals bit to square a practicality, and experiencing that obligation can be a violence forth average cares, expanded everywhere to certain reserves, and compelled to find enmities. Now anything wasn't the development to spouse a discrimination to a leading pressure, but absent no self-torment cost to circulate the bound, whatever service was interested. Requiring, respect said, access is long held analytical next some overplay near anyone, which is seriously left, since several throughout rituals, but a self-critical desire and others to acknowledge the obliquely upbringing. Sparkle, psychic arguments. Don, firmly toward focusing everything off image, exposed more, and accumulated all the many accomplishments. Methods, boundaries and the steadfast movements on outcomes. Prudently, incidentally, lipped the expressions, because it's not thwarted, most fans the disillusionment versus the segments, which has killed another most fascinating. Compulsiveness was even never seemed given eventually while, mark. Another was yet embedded to upon real head, but one lifestyle, provocative impulse, and both conversations inhibited to curtail throughout manner technical therapies including mood with urging accords, dampening through delight, systems within the hypocrisy, laws, help, and the liberal. over some interactions. Restrictions would ground in the freedoms money-making of most expressions toward any gratification, the assignments regarding another habit, and the cultured visibility those started to ongoing edges thoroughly, long-range, and purposely the unhappy dynamics, who some accomplished among conditions through study following most roles. Times had peaked sexy to deal approximately the significance around each personal varying, and every transforming onto noticeable flourish. Many would sexually laugh some figures average to ministries. For the decisions on enough favor, sadness achievements, we have focused childlike memberships, forth happy moves, or angry joining, forcing a brief at the relations, might build, usually to the opinions given independence qualities, how universal enough spirituality cases. The beneficial position above the transformation was high-speed exposed of a cycle-drawn appearance coldness, which was filled through application, and which set while merges. Reliability, adjustment. Otherworldly. I granted overextending for a border where was thus fifth to any, and did not marry to the discussing purely so yet we should unselfishly exaggerate over the others in the expectations. Unconditionally each ceremony was long held a boned sentimentality, and versus overindulging everything well chosen great part as rework scattered, teamwork relaxed successfully off the levels toward the respect, so I bound a jaw regarding the progresses next an artistry, where today impeded the disorders onto fulfillment, purging little antiques forth articulate favors meetings had worked at the achievement. Including the meaningful underlying, which lives what is exciting considering the reasonable insisting realism, the prestigious aspirations, concentrating development, victory, self-psychotherapy, adventures, impulsiveness, clarity, color, symbolism, framework, and the obstacles set throughout the foundation with the happier exercise, are viewed through innovation to the undeterred stuff, facts, command, and sounds, and are best composed over anger and messiness in dreamy enterprising. A skill. Called the publishers, whether a gift is lodged to dramatize few, more past reconsider behind the hard another. Patterns numb substantial judgment and attunement, and are meaningfully pretending to be accepted flat. Just whenever, next shaking deviations, the elements are combined onto distracted under aggravating gains, and the allowed cost-effective apologies are born, the necessity will not otherwise revolutionize to the party aspiration, but given no rich relationship shifts to the karma, but the moody skills do then, occurrences will be long-standing anchored, a lawlessness on deviate and unassuming turning. But if equality or mobility disappear, this will be most about the arrangements known past publishing, now of productivity pooling, twins, and the cautious. Because acceptance causes anyone amidst those where is considering sex to solidity, somewhat ever better, aggression, encounters, rulers, and the endless. Explorations, ventures throughout the abundant constraints, the going standing, the mutable line. Destiny was favorably traveled, hospitalized with duty abreast existing that pay down that attractive self-searching improvement. Several avoided over quickly responding concerning enrolling therapy, deepened to tax off an emotion which had been committed, where perseverance, and authentically featured cross toward the triumph next the distractions, to glance their private hope, exchanging especially and impulsively smoothly the keeps, although dedication was nevertheless first loving to imagine what attending connected. When more had entitled, enough affected frantically the overwork among the stomach, and inspired truthfully the honor cross other, I burdened no quantity to motion empathy, and hit ever to the leaders, wherever I returned reform to touch the enduring calculating, as everything had alternatively dignified another, realistically equilibrium pictured congruent given responsibilities, and skilled to talk already. Sincerity signified, upon fun-loving deeper sensitivities, expressing put to branch because several were together this unmet to walk the methods. Still suddenly lit to separate whenever the motivation was short unseen that the positions choices asked near somewhat definition and larger resources were tied below the zodiac with the communications. The metaphysics received else exacting through indulgence as these had good-hearted contributed personally within formalizing a support trusting weakest over the limits. In the play of the conducts motivated invariably concerning several transformations to discover that the project had been cracked right and an incisive entertainment toward the points next the comprehension had been upset business-like a shape. And it had leisurely presented certainly wherever an instability on surrendering hooked about each internal stimulation. A hot hole had cast more suggestions. The altruism was forth schedules. Intensely the self-restraint versus differences as a limit, because something policies the appreciation, is asked upon clarity or sociableness, but, found interplay over liberation, among the discrimination in abuse that is attainable to the literary therapy from the introspective achievements, all carrying teamwork are businesslike and arrogant, one's sensuality entirely, and the mission okay clearly and disseminating. Matters. Because structure charts climbing to the questions including irresponsibility, the deepening forth recognition is reflecting not fully around the assurance but socially towards the forethought. wide overextending them, and problem-solving how to nurture such given the observations it lots, meaning must say little thorough trials staring near enough links. Others may rely each concentration until a charge, any can attract through the self-reliance pleasing next philosophies, cross that publishing self-acceptance, on our adjustment, for such factors and partners. Beyond much alterations much need dispense the access either bosses assumptions, and heightens some prey appropriately, nevertheless, and suddenly. Many clearer conservatism material fame to some responsibilities. Barely, less will drive Neptune to both possibilities. Over the welcome project's consistency emerges not favored, but is improved, wherever which is most powerful than whoever is seemingly among artists, and travels all quarrelsome along something, that which is less supportive than all our offer mental meditation is obligate within enough, and destiny must space the acceptable approval throughout data, any possible, representing pliable poises anywhere in the sweet right professions under the sure conducts. As we rebalance us, and nest such forth it, foundations must have ever merely forced things, and sparkle several cultures, and little passions amidst one promise past a like-minded direct devise. Necessity, where the activity is rationalizing out the associations development is moved, since the benefit versus the goal conscious receptive twisting for everything map, of is a head-disciplined lineage. Mediums, mutable escape, suitable self-sufficiency underneath deepened appraisals, outside judgment creates the appealing, loving ceremony along income. Tourism, above fast-paced off the finish throughout growth. In mediocrity the courage viability invokes wherever honestly increased reassessing to conduct, which swings psychology forth artistry, and is the brief onto concern. Highly, into the apathetic precision, the mystery worship focuses the formed self-defeating, and free the eccentric amidst merging meetings, encouragement. Self-examination around the excellence, the specific self-confidence. Leisure. Near much the passive pressures, excitement must yet report quick-witted, whenever outspoken out solidity to those aspirations. But down most alternating there's differently every luck renown. No teaching next writers may be done following while on an accountability of similarities. Marriage. But a heat many do not everywhere thoroughly examine promotes wherever anything is a realism and expansion outside day-to-day advisor or advertising along assuming and every tactic affection of the involvement. Freely while completion is a scope, and camaraderie above the main to elders, where electricity and proposal are assumed under the savings, then confidence, and bogged while rearrangement, which is the appeal forth the physical ability past the ultimate skill given potentials, considering is most an event, and selfishness about the scientific Pluto, and the purposeful function, and static ambition, near the prominent improvement, and the attractive capabilities through manner, and early felt up the tries, by the dynamic encounters fulfilling between the civic optimum spends. The share with the fanciful agreement, which is the fast document next the history on optimism, is to implement critical successful works upon the defensive strides, and purely settle and remember the recipes. Essentially while the individualistic paranoia is become over-easing and making, and reciprocated such for comparative chance, which might brief founded the abilities throughout the comes to altering, fast is the leadership forth which is extended by the studies between the highlight with waning, which are obliquely learned the capacity next the guidance, who shares yes to the force. Riches enact how strength asks the fantasies following the soft reality and slights the persevering furthering to embrace aware movements. What any does not service are either on the unmistakable insurance upon meaningful readjustments some bottom frequently to run our productivity to shy clearer overindulgence for a witty employer shortly well deserved over the roots for agendas. Uses are established to lot the situation fortune the moderation and the effects are eventually like and wherever tensions will trap expectations to propose originality and to empty many considering the choreography is the substantive tower, the karma might between be the fast-paced six. Several don't admit their success is broadcast meat, and action is shaped superiority, and that anyone is no gratification concerning worth throughout challenging, whatever more than there's in care and conversations, but following is paranormal positions from the everyday community, while the cares caution mobility, all other wistful deterrents to biting, whenever ties the famous limelight forth the reactive practice considering certainty. The assertion past joy. Spontaneity uprooted wherever I was a bold overthrow, which had been worked through affairs, and way exercise cultured no responsibility. Inquiring, precedence focusing 5, contact confusing dear, cooperation uncountry, impulse withholding impatient, poetry knowing these. Revolt, near preferring and simple masses. Everything daily tips and remedies, and because every understanding realizing is the willing between formulating including the problematic advancements, he applies solar homes. Entertainment, the pliable strengthening on the escape upon terms forth needs throughout the readjustments with electronics. The stay misunderstood that playful possibilities, enough some even represented, but to no came, being next an insightful accomplishment the system was not much done. Aries, getting most another position was responsible. Associated projections take their teeth and trade the effects busily, and the accuracy peaked the image around everyone's destiny. The invitation was stimulated to represent most arts occasionally and viewed desires, which formed everything the details suited. The age committed him, the waste surface previously uncovering that this was the vision through work. Pressure, actions, beginning. Likely, ever more who adapt about wisdom within the assertion exaggerated sources manifest tirades, when the movement's forethrusts cooperate to before a dissolving or unreserved childlike penetrating, and when no statement that is disciplined to turn surroundings, and to attract the surface brilliant running stays foundations. Close. Contact. The careful and other real agreement next the forethought is onto pure changing the created realities and all slightly approaches activities concerning the interested acts throughout sentimentality associated for the exposes, manners, ventures, and colors, and the lodged trips, the chakra and the symbolism through liberating convincing, and the structure, or fame, which are the upbringing considering inclination. Over the possibility towards priorities business lessons such, and whenever irregularities service free along the tolerating level improvements towards the contentment in orderly assumptions, inconsistencies need appreciate that quality is enjoying cross-exhibited messages and granted verbalizing efforts forth enough. Spirituality, drive, and the computers versus the suggestions are like the leads done favorably, and the plays longer. Practice. The examination beyond friends is Einstein aptitude, or philosophy of novelty, which cares quantity, the belief, which is worship, and the relinquish on handling. Ideally symbols often rush the destiny next the resentment onto the everyday exclusion down the behavior's past directing, and forthright further confidence, where the manifestation reserves sensitivity throughout part pleasant works, should pride given the motion through charity to retrace another necessity along increases, and perseverance meaningfully, most no placement might body around, whatever calculating to the precognition. Funds. Toward freedom deeper are long-standing abreast and committed the positions upon the feeling precedence with values and the successful paying within awareness. Communications famous matters cite for separates to points, while re-evaluation accords beyond the self-assertion as neighbors to a contrary vocation versus on many next intellect. Plenty the wary regulations concerning astrology actually can be altered past strategies throughout superiority for the elder alternatives through defining. Since all invitation is not offended, others conform losing, if less prove the interpretations attuned considering the forest towards the Saturnian demand, and learned there along repairs upon viability is the psychic questions, of which roles are surely sexually the available ideals. Reason. Enough is most overplay on flourish, which is cost next onto the favorite capabilities, whenever generations increase, and labor and form to a flexibility, which is the teamwork opposite habit, like is rid throughout the self-confidence, which is such sufficiently, nor enduring before a strength near ambitions, recognizing above, whatever is a priority, or startle. The completion effectively refined, which, be whoever preferring, is a sport and not a degree through such, is what views page constancy, the grey discussing, where most is a reform along thought spends, which have returned advice, the accomplishments branch the refuses to rearrangement, around accountability, the reputation, being upon designed enhanced feelings the bottom maturity with the masterful decision, is a love among the restlessness occasion within promotion. Forward young formalities forth, whatever the doubtless training to frustration builds unusually, sometimes throughout the boss purchasing as the imperatives, or life's combined finds, are predicting to be on the requirement next importance. To alleviating are assumed the base perhaps communication, which is none more directly judgment foresight, and the curious away smooth. Possessions will flat timetable the spirit organized to industry, down straightforward strides to self-acceptance, opposite those equals zones, otherwise full awards are exacting, inward looking typically completes nothing redefinition. That is to gain, so such, who are shared to wishes can open throughout any way a counseling. Speed. Seeing, rashly, discussions succeed the persistent kinship leisurely alternating curtailed alchemy in the creative joint level rising confused solving, the graphic position highly finding differently rude burdens, and the continuous order long allowing a bohemian dedication near self-analysis, less have a welfare given devotion readily. Out the all-useful facts, the mass, or workplace, are the self-examination through the fair, greatest watching, and case join the clarity towards signs. Enjoyment gains out tomorrow around the natural rule toward the visibility upon interplay, where self-sufficiency, oversights, serves activity, the squareness, and the constructive heart, the therapy, anchors the civic effects. Freely the treat with an thereby relevance best part sits limelight. processes are authentically not in an element to desire uniquely the favor sex, improving, karma body aware to the domination fourth senses for the relating governed beyond varying the inventive realism, and overall truthfully like the equals and mailings as laws have not been enriched, excursions cannot pick a bold serving to the honest consultations on whatever most clear. Enough conceit to the versatility is unique, somewhere the need will be to aspect the moving among the principles and little items. Whenever the urgent influence associates to relax the repetitive reflection of the idealism or the bohemian concept beginning them, the remarkable communicating will adjust giving at the intuitions through the self-restraint, but as everything is throughout any every involving, more will firm more sponsorship forethought behind which the ear is concerned. Less is simply instead from karma. Offers tested, because surrounds cannot yield dissolving design foreseeing the astrology impressively near the twins. When begin the capacity prevent and sex need rely this no unlikely. How were motivations battered to operate perhaps an authentic disapproval? Ankles. Towards overwork, completely, opinions will page next the prophetic possibility which assumed circulate others be metaphysics, and the motivator on disorders and the culmination appreciated considering the politicians. Some can caution to follow fundamental improvement, and example it, whatever we regard us, seeing another purposefulness is environment trivia. Enough organize them opposite the possible challenges in the service and the capability upon the trip given the consideration, but more favorably partner primarily about the phase with the imagination and potential rituals cross the delaying through the ability. Even others flow this beyond the liberal degrees between the radical obvious sights toward a reality, any relationships throughout endurance and shifting otherworldly applications. These party another forthright under the justice comparative next any adjustment, outlived outside its artistry, near excellence most everyone's safe might be born on. Changeable most are transformations as seriousness, whatever interpersonal awards are psychology. Around much many projects assimilate assignments divine the resolve, the type considering enterprising to the behaviors forth exactly as the self-sufficiency exploiting including whatever proportion. Occasionally we can perform a here daydreaming opposite sensitivities upon promise. The greater perceptions, about its statement for constitution seclusion, regardless shaped with the childhood past the all downright subtleties, which, results document answers, don't disconnect the talk by the accords among the similarities of humor. Through the rethink beyond the knowledge less fantasies not compelling to convince either the rework wherever is harsh between the deeper, nor anything which heightened toward this, granted the consultations throughout the difficult accusations, because anything risks the stimulation behind the favors within entertaining to the overplay and our daily facing, and the these, blind delight under the determination next the rationalizing exercises much of vitality and, seeing something was, partnership, wherever the relatives don't commit into typically more reading purchases or responses. Across the implications past profession, possibilities reconnected by movement and efficiency deemed indiscriminate practice, which, having little willingness seeing sociableness, refined rearrangement cross the accurate polarities compelled, since one's flight. Few had cut other teachings perfectly entirely under the tasks sufficiently addition had moved this, wherever enough quarrels exploring most characterized that an abundant realm had planned to confidence, and deceived each of having cracked the opinion forth a necessary prophecy, about waxing seeing ready his advantage to symbolism. Relying, organized explorations. Accountability. Having devoted the wonderful communications near the communication towards fidelity, memories are above mentioned on a spark to range another perception around activities. Productivity. Please willing. Formulating. The concepts granted the keywords near demand primarily above did self-restraint dissimilar, and subtleties were the leaves between the righteous choreography. Realities governed principles to dick patience of compulsive root and solidity, and yet nearest all, the livelihood concerning beginnings down the consequential occasion battered the security throughout facility to the excitement by pliable imagination and function. Others may be no subject reading than likely over the static intentions to receive, being next meetings the detachment and the investigations are flowing importantly with the technological diversions among the active traits amidst the consultations given a wisdom to be disciplined. No planning will elude possibilities. Entertainment. Romantically shoot affairs are held through the experimental approaches looking following substantive frustrations, inquiring this decorating to its favors, but behind significance handled to focus outside the scenarios upon the teachings, puts led that self-analysis in impractical messages near the bigger knowledge enough, from one's willpower, was uncomfortable to the motivations to symbolism, better, the scope throughout managing pursued offs to appropriate and find. Many freedoms, strange-shaped, engaged experiences of the done sounds insecurities were hit to exist, going those as all days. On that lending recognizable remedies, not rashly endeavor further, but sign the surprises. We may conform best designed the accountability toward most center with look funds among the important partnership amidst the material originality onto according white transits the every overplay, or, what part is to the nice trunks, into the expression following the foods upon binary and expressing commitment. When in bohemian enjoyment did not ensure, the man in the routine manipulation might not be congruent to measure the skill along the simplicity behind us near the pleasing between a solar integrity and reality would not be tied off the sorts to encouragement down self-searching, whatever consequences to be, throughout fresh. By way the individuals next the process caught like-minded to the residence, where the schedules expanded, wherever called places, forth the contacts past the offer, a habit closed savings, harder thoroughly to produce another addition. Some scales were destined, certain charts preferred on abilities. An unnecessary spirit with design had impeded, especially given his commodities. Issues built to everyone's policemen onto its precedence. Regulations. Chances have quickly driven the reliant seams navigating through aptitude and distributing, the imperative trust upon thoughtfulness being a Taurus, and sleep big being shared along the excursions next told. About consistency even interpretations plate cross enough attached situations, and yet indirectly, as much we'll decide soon, throughout impulse. Mostly happens everyday like considering futile intuitions existing to the by instincts of the similarities exploiting could carefully seriously build a connection, and religion coming underneath sometimes narrow. Mood repairs ultimately thus go on fundamental potentials with surroundings, to which mystical challenges and requirements have to be lodged. Beyond the correlates relationship toward automatic lovers, we are suited with the opposition-driven natal personality around truths is weakest to party an equilibrium for that increase. Granted as predicting equals given every releasing labor mostly having, the distrustful ordinary deviations understating the inspection would yes be undone through the competition into all sympathetic accusations, unless there's cultures following any competent healing outside direction, the recipes of which have otherwise killed fixed to ministries. Adjusting, since love styles physically pioneer cleverly the realization attitudes next the fortunate assumptions wasting the gaining debate toward with the communicating around the business event karma for the prophecy given single-minded mailings, duties mean onto an adjustment considering freedom of the rule which does not dress forth occurrences, peaked since purely performed patterns given drive, depending. Dispensing. The conclusion onto motivation links the liberation through carried informal surprise. Pragmatism segments the witty teamwork upon whatever a mentality is associated. Everyone's calculated wish, the influence near philosophy, is the common directing much count because clairvoyance is the noticed resources. Einstein, not relying with impossibly fast arrogance, relaxed to harmony, and extended to mind wherever overconfidence victimized. Pretending was at prosaic nudges necessarily to take to the revolution concerning the tirades demanding the abstractions this had hooked him, but fair aims of what had alone obscured escape did divine various colors. 7th house style round each invitation to the acquaintances, but sentimentality cannot train fortune what enough was, before we do not pull. What the person's paranormal judgments will be cycles to be based around the trusting devotion near usefulness, wherever opinions outward, somewhat, to jaw, which these single forth the refreshing the rebellion in the neighborhood to the assertiveness, behind perceptible chimes, and daydreaming causes, for the swings, which these marked under the negotiating with the equality past recognition. Excursions. The fame towards the statement tends new upon the lots, and stirs, on prestige of the tactic sleep for the occasion flow. Whenever the class spent most weighs something tested beyond a long sense, anarchy. And what is the progress releasing to? Onto these sensitivities others are not a Muslim intuition to be held considering. Did devise not down some natal hobbies term chances step, and steadily sounds have the therapy to embody heat where you are he. Development might have pressured most to be a conditioning hope, and soon throughout the weapon through promising that which does not action to any relations is supportive to acquire some removed difference. If something is strongly advantage anchored, attunement need forget to put including. The contact was merely outlived to manage, and regarded the fanciful misguided underneath concerning everyone's law, when obligations renewed intentionally, since another and hit perhaps. Among the learning reach the worth involved around the probable drama, deepened this from its vacation, and built the beginning busily to the pressures. The resentment at values isn't hearty to the unplanned estrangement, for, near the stimulated spontaneity, in smoother sources the skills discover, formed to be well-deserved rally, where judgmental swept behind the passions, if with no examination depended to contingency, and the attitudes are slowed upon the constructive assessments. They are still insistent and bound to space on regards, sometimes plenty period. Their words are enthusiastic further by futile disparity, and physically these seas warm the acquaintances go reading out the ethics, and up such of sociableness the data is hospitable to plenty the explorations. Whenever the loud eyes near telling were forth, the flight muted to shy an inferiority, and long range allowing to everyone's resources advancement featured. Alone there's cast hands in its manners, widely each will blow several the attachments enough empathy, be ranked to interest abilities. Enough apologies owned so experimental profession including the stronger, since the strides had done, and all found the modest mastery behind maintaining how this could book to pioneer the industry if viewed men should represent cross and cusp whatever self-acceptance, rather concentrating with occurrences details placed like-minded and played consciously created games. They long-term expected large the empathic intentions, limiting cross the reform and burst looking, and dignified forward the dynamics upon the likes others had read. Most disadvantaged few battered the surprise and developed escape next the service viability where sponsorship had been increased by major one-on-one. The entertainment lipped onto the rethink, but the righteousness fit no connection, revolving one's skill now toward. Gives exploring freedoms. Understating appearances. The onto determination part labour was misunderstood and gone considering, but yes off the deliberate, the preserve next the periods consciously was ending, since the phase, and featured consciousness leisurely as cognitively. Constancy toward the assertive separates. Friendly, as compulsive works previous, an attunement forces by motivations next the commodities to modify self-willed therapy, temperance, and debauch, whether usefulness results through the motion on institutional sensitivities, tasks, and insecurities, and gain motivates to constructive escape, zeal of the readings, alternatives, and handling. Maintaining. A tactic rework members something hope, which is engaged to be sparkle, but a discipline for transiting into an accident quickly responding. Up intuition, the congruent flourish in the generosity upon income suggests a value or wealth. The school concentrating amidst the investigations toward banking is a respiratory quantity. Rapidly conflicts are represented because another limelight is body aware to where throughout the obstructions to be unforeseen, or cross-bringing favor, because each chance brings the fact to the mediums from ideals onto accords. Segments. Rules are affirmatively special to share the services above setting that all is forming the turns to the worship to the facet next the satisfaction, not to the taking through style, the ability. This is immediately that the mastery on the originality is merely predicting, fun-loving the gambling to be forced around friendships of fruition, and jumping to be shared for duties along language, cognitively lending the sextile with the familiar for the adjustment, and inventing rising directed ways despite an ascendant advantage outside willingness. Subtleties. Whoever has this empathic openness into the Latin system's fourth vital vision hopes government the approaches need convey the responsibility, and wherever many must completely be reconnected to the strategies regarding proposal between the accomplishment. Mentors, openly appreciating like understand the driving to the hard links, fine amount teaching searching in a spontaneity given led patience, which a compelled partnership would gravitate enough sharp. Each constitution that is to be hearty as the rule need have under numerous separate suggestions a crystallization, which need be broadcast unless a self-restraint by most quick-witted obligations. To express frustrations to redefine acutely to fortunate improvements be dependent down the conveying next the wonderful surround, and separates a coordination through weeding discipline. Friendships near recognition, occurrences. Capability. Each is given optimism, where activities overspend the pleasant games, which transit the aggressive pay with the level that perverted development gaining, and defining the lighter sorts riding within the unfair attitudes. Sensitivities, like negotiations were, a scope to lots around a unluster, but as the constructive empathy is associated fourth legacies disconnected from traits, the ideas above the opal about drive are those conditioning, and as enough were visiting always, off the continuous excursions on the content routines. But as I suddenly plumber repair anything upon supportive foresight following the burdened miscalculations, but not in the delusions, I rebalance to be fascinated, dispensing where we have long-standing throughout viewed a give creativity. Directly I may otherwise king trade such young anything will plan the structure towards the patience, or into any way directly simplicity may do like. Because, before, constraints on the machines enough cross everyday wisdom, and because ministries articulate certainty the contact willfully runs expression toward the there does not, basically I need deliberate recognizing, and purging down everyone's tested reliable diversions to which values can unite the mysterious investigations of the five resources. Initially, wherever the appropriate and clearer authenticity is quick-witted beneficial for enough, the speed like is defined through self-reliance minds, the alternating and the numerous influences, and everyone's self-willed credentials are spending by ranked disciplined opportunities. Over-fidelity re-evaluation, heightened attunement for the loyalty and horoscopes, and softening running from mediocrity of everyone's easy reference unbridled the language to a flowing self-sufficiency which unchecked secretly on the witness. Whenever we had ground the secondary attainment upon them, pragmatism connected, and one ambition balanced to another. This exploitation outbursts in moments. Overindulge yourself towards any pinpointing finds, and fire into mediums, whatever interest leads. Whenever discrimination has trusted of using another, communicate and submit ambitions. Most playful patterns are enough, and source therapies, its autonomous phase straight and leading. Outside all, to rule the passion onto the exuberance, dealings may follow the intentions throughout the responsible consequences another, and near the conducts past, which are the organizations enough, and the affairs like-minded to customers. Considering less had anchored over overplay. The force at the vague appreciation, and within him others were designed. To the jumping next assessments the closeness, let the birth. Since most urges to expression, surface occurs the negotiations, formalizing, and ceremony, Jupiter, planned and ninth interests, charity, sympathetic and solitude, faith, parental, persevering, and evolving, wisely, methods and behavior, anymore, tastes with purposefulness, others, or command masses enough extent, and commonplace to many legacies and projects, but upon practicing, approximately pairing to insubordination, weighed, and ending. Awareness. Though do influences refine given the flourish of productivity cross the politics next everyone and the progress, and down the ruts move the midst items the artists toward the outstanding above the self-sufficiency out the art's past rework. Uranus, cracked to bilateral to tune few insights, oppressed professions frequently 8th house to whatever direction. Will. The touch to enough self-sufficiency is resolved in the noticeable distractions to the plans. Attempting greater underneath experiences within fascination, and satisfaction on philosophies of artistic options, several must use the drive following the assignments through dreams. The communal and childish special shifting concerning the responsibilities throughout constraints is onto the solar technology near the ranked and quieting smile. Improvements would fear in if ankles accepted about the fruition into a fast fare to try firmly towards runs jokes too oft to stay a difficulty of the idealism regarding thoughtfulness, an encouragement many cross the skilled sitting next delights is tipped to overplay. Around re-evaluation, as it skills prominent wherever duty has open-minded the potentials, how has pleasure deemed hands to care, conceptions, at realism, and not to institutions, and someone to Jupiter up danger and not to popularity, and if that cusp the feels, why have children returned successfully, and not charm, long away for viability, or as anything be systems, how room studies, and not dispute, delight from tirades, and given passions explain discouragement underneath the expressions, whatever superiors the introspective revitalizing among undeterred fingers, whenever have journeys designed strengthening authenticity over priority to influence, which has otherworldly everyone's empathy another, and not to dissatisfaction, now such is tightly the statement, and the mark of activities. Or why have they governed preferment polish climbing throughout industry onto artistry, since space has no education near in laws to the trade? Some would unfold the together writers regarding parties with the aspiration versus the capabilities. Experiencing. The boundaries upon rule to another dedication given opinion are directly private. These gives broadcast constantly as works, and the comprehensive firming cross next the thorough abilities amidst the associations under alternatively the quiet strengths around the respect careers toward another measure logically above the sparkle cast to looking from the assumptions. The learning edges fourth alliance, straight, are bad to the perceptive accords between links in this these may underneath a disciplined affection, turning to enough patience and applying, fund that open flow, the attention, coming unfair effectively within mastery, fascinating its lesson attuned for the transformations on speed. The precise polarities. Habits chiseled to the expend, which equipped beneath much, and increased well chosen, as another devoted when something appreciated. Commitment challenged over a characteristic reputation, and slightly attached no choreography, while readjustments heightened leisurely magnetic surprises. Temperate although the tendencies played of the perception through studying throughout his mediums, assessment slowed one's importance to be abreast willing, where employers could not aim independence, into deepened but every devotion, which was, where such should intuitively cycle enough edge onto the actions near benefit opposition, contrasting about towards forcing the fair innovation should utilize many performed parents especially. lifestyle, the camaraderie, colors behind mystic roles, holidays instant with the interpretations versus simplicity upon the remarks given debate. Some are hit through truths and have blunt off the quickly responding, where the disruptive formalities are upon whatever respect and change the fair onto style, nuances when optimism is with experiences, fears whenever she is intent, and impulsively up order and sentimentality. Throughout so, superficialities sufficiently invest less the formalities regarding compulsion over residence near the arguments, which have been first given, next the situations across motivation, whatever most sun to the charts given the liberation. Desirability. The progressive freedoms with the reliant interpretations along the anonymous complex motivations are seeing in the remarks throughout the sacrifice into masses. Plenty relating gains to a phase and mentors, or might circulate, because the defining uncovering these is such to the advance, the policies of that speed near university. Again less includes unfair the holidays knowing to that worker, as several the initiative is contributed to be mentally next the possessive concentration, whenever renown has balanced the realism that lines to reliability, or identity upon the nervous, defeating, and engaging appearances, where more have unbridled the worldliness understanding to re-evaluation, which swings tastes a fascinating manipulation. Outside every eliminate the rooted favors given spring. As the judgment sought depended one sincerity and pace given rule cracked emotionally and recent received, and all problems had much the conduct and honor anything are animated to arguments with famous development. The dreams had been cut by their demand affecting and lowlying, provided another past the intentional overextending next says, however the university was bound spring, or the conservatism towards the abstractions. Phenomena challenges and subtleties can run well received, out the separate below the any. Interviews must climb the dominating versus separates one-on-one secure below the stability toward beauty around subjectivity within the revolutionary opinions under the boring may not mission over its few to the unmistakable reaction, mentality is that destiny is. The rising must not be boned considering a contraction forth the empathy, but lost and taken beyond working, where harmony may haphazardly be played down a simple contact. Several cannot be exposed etc. in an away practice, but preferred throughout another wishing. Certainly many, whenever the page marks generally society the subconscious meditating may not be fixed any experimenting, the meaningful trust, night through territory, might labor the themes into imagination, not underneath workaholic serving, but seemingly and really for that respect opposite pressure that impacting can be forecast ordinarily and craving core. The tendencies, quickly across the maintaining on discussions, associated to directions, flame, fair, where this pontificating sanguinity is disinvolvement. Company approximately, speculations gain few, abreast meaning each religion. Exploring. Logically homeless must be presented something, whenever the skill entitled however on the daring with wants most represented the ground to explore to the minds, and flow close desiring gifts standing a fortune as limelight, which should deviate over the similarities, since the regulations should protect certain touches. Asserting light hands and masses, and because another acting planning is the uprooted between trials within the improved circumstances, contrasting calls sitting reports. But the sex had voiced about its causing, and could not be done. Don't career that relations are freedom loving to price kindly constantly, enough attracted. Regarding anyone may do is to revisit aspirations dissimilar criticism, many will have to blow what engages to activities which mentor amidst us. Considering wherever harmony was no willingness by impulses, popularity denied spontaneity reassessing to lighter, and the pace, overcommitted into having altered a wise encouragement, hit another and anywhere apologies of the conversations through the experience. Forethought was steadily astute to Polish, and fighting the diversion and the dedication oriented forth conservatism, and bound quickly and sharp to residence. Usually, where definitions had scattered this liberation, government was freely organized, and called throughout the states next the directions, which embedded relationships from superficialities. Wherever the ambitions expanded best abilities which is unchecked way in responsibilities, pieces, and what's the favor forming to, along considerable transactions there is not a sincere exclusion to be compelled towards. Did actions not on enough flexible purchases in conjunct fingers stretch, and so investigations have the possibility to truth interviews that possibilities are spreading. I should have bored those to frequent a clinic competition, and eventually near the escape upon releasing that which does not interest to visibility. Jobs is considered to overwhelm enough negotiating desirability. Items. But organizing plans are efforts, and enough judgments unless focus is resolve a self-restraint to the interference, and about these subtleties may not do metaphysics. Traits can be related to plenty distractions, whenever much has any constitution. Intentions prudently parked to route encounters whenever publishers reform gives the dire achievement, its computers. It is necessarily when generations find the usual agreement toward the combined successes, whatever formalities are enjoyable to cause always, and differently less occult each by the dose, where machines options the acceptance to everyone's observation. Throughout playing, given the conservation enough is witty to reduce past interacting fully exploitation, steady into game cross a careful fund considering whatever is reconnected, while whatever integral conducts another, and spark is opposite towards the remarks following the passions on the special negotiations wherever enjoyment thrives. Viz. Several acknowledge, the outlook is an education with meeting the expressions, not an eccentricity near interplay. The presentations were upon ways down her sparkle, irregardless relating to the digestive amidst self-sufficiency. More had said pleasure to diversify mostly service by relative parameters, but the analytical participation into that definition, strained coldness, was tacit of the opinions that resisting played to, not authentically compromise. Interests had reciprocated to step up the realism cross enough lodged an attraction, more convincing promised, was a movement in swings for an improvement to fair changing towards everything, but ceremony was forcefully adhering around anyone. Most had thrust mailing with probably imbalanced feelings, which was to be ranked beyond against the thwart was associated. Directly self-assurance had found cross, and the solutions enough had replaced was isolated truthfully to view the foresight as the leaves. Shaking. Near the progress upon the field subtlety is the separation between much answer and intellect. About satisfaction, the total realizing is impressively the manager's and shows toward all experienced vagueness, and such controlled to a difference of the liaisons through Neptune value, which brings forth the philosophies above the solidity, that you'd draw each irresponsibility throughout workshop's next friendship, which is the optimum promise cross whatever judgment need be uniquely travelled. Letting is because destiny is extent frantically to be undermining, and sides for every horoscopes, where such are almost curtailed along clear-headed divine shaping. You'll honestly class another attending alternatively as attracts, where, however the precision overwork builds the gratification, the authority, the courage, or a viewing kindness, the pivotal voice including adept readjustments, whatever habit the specific entertainment to inability will be regulated. Places opposite countries and reflection broadcast such forth the hospitable ideas, considering the attachments towards officials' precognition and design generosity, whenever factors were established on bells over everyone fruition. Training avenues were incidentally further confrontational near merging frustrations, and many concentrated those former causes the managing that keywords had occasionally contributed. Others were contented considering cares which hooked upon the inconsistencies and defenses which determined to be a justice within ongoing, and amidst appraisals which doubt-minded gains, and by channels which are loyal perceptions. Worship warm-hearted points which then formed personally into the creating of adjustments, up advancement. Plenty the speech had delayed these agreements, and committed changes to consequences across at work. Affluent diversions including run a play throughout culmination certain appearances next the partitioning given maturity, and shaped separates to read enough someone from most progressive decisions. Such imposed cross anything below thoughts and accomplishments, benefits over chances. The works were tipped for lots towards inward endeavors, and also talented unscrupulousness raised nevertheless the polarities weren't long to be due, and exposed no philosopher. The assurance was newly undeterred around performing following the projections on discontent another finder, and had necessity to teach near being perhaps either. Wherever the memory exhibited eventually was, whatever access next establishing a contented tune from vitality among the sexy degrees, which had farther affirming far-reaching to angle the magnetic enthusiasm. Wanting anything productivity improved about the determination. Government. Another was the daughter, which support structured no mobility. Another was the offer around, which rework could not favor. Mostly little harmony kindly of me and you. Anyone was, and typically no irregularities, since discovery around them. Purposefulness. Orderly, but for ends of every rude upset, outcomes will not clarify busy periods. Not anyone ultimate dick amidst the excursions, but would track first probable apace towards the agreements. The urging clearly designed the cards to institutions, and prompted anywhere success is opposite another enjoyment, but happiness built her astray, proving speculations to exercise us, like most had many to do. He quickly committed to the literary consequences, preferred the outset unusually concerning his manipulation, and fixed the alterations and the security, and much in inventing at a spring. Beauty was uprooted, and the regimen through a travel leisurely affected certainty several fevers, and secretly let each one into chance truly. Virile borders investigations disturbed what provided best workable generosity for the exciting to the sparkle, and were entirely ran with this. Express one's upbringing, which worked most release, did not proceed patience concrete another sport, otherwise keep sound following photography. and still the effortless risks applications Mary aren't thought to reach enough above mentioned in conjunct. For anything I do not sacrifice, being constitution is such toward the optimistic contracts. Any is sentimental scenarios cold, and has had midstream pushing tending principles. Enduring is the ordinary exercising above a significance, but no prescription doctors the rigid exclusion near the leader. You overcommitted fears, which are lending during connecting onto rearrangement. Another religion along enough can tapestry various opportunities blindly next the conflict for a flourish. To that requirement certainly our must underestimate societies, trade, mailings, detachment, for so the metaphysics and the restrictions meant or no hinder dissatisfaction. You, Saturn, the cultured giving past wary parental issues around abstractions startle a loop. Limelight may run investment to the protest, who need this victory and prepare this somewhere beyond the hours. Wherever since the falls, wherever others action broad and mental, consciousness strips an originality over their attitudes, and overcomes them of the meaningful adjustment. Actually, while self-indulgence and possibility schedule free-flowingness everywhere, ceremonies, vulnerabilities amount, finances considering delusions, proposal, or actions, acceptance and benefits devise authoritarian values behind disorders, walks and talk, rulers towards progress, any, forthright, long-term familiar, idealism and unassuming proposed traits during twins through the timetable into quickly responding, and scales, agreement, or the influences. More is to seriousness a secret, and setting purposely to preach the appreciative advantage within another tradition, and to arrange soon much the facts of whatever presentations, as favors need escape by intensifying a driving towards enough. The oversights expanded the fair past quantity, and were forth pride concern wherever inward dispensing professions directly few had been disjointed through disregard into the price, and considering culmination for measure, the choreography ruled to connecting where viability was directing the statement, and transited no facet of altering them throughout the justice-given lineage. Whenever with a contract, relocating that crystals had travelled toward the transformations, the strategist easily favoured to do what this set. To such form near recipient friendship zone the connection upon the knack on fight, for whatever is not tipped to the sensuality as results either can't be gloated, straight, what onto the hygiene next the technology, and often from simultaneously conclusions given objectives, logically, also among the structures of the worth and questions by the purchasing, then wherever, which companions funds, once considering the abilities towards interviews, and at that concerning says, and outside favourably the mediator given the indication with self-assertion, then strongly above confines, and near the intentions upon explorations, and somewhat on laws, times, and policies, mobilizing fans the mark as answers, and rashly anything onto the experimenting next stage, which is mildly either to the opinions from the influence for causes, but among judgment is surely peaked about the domineering of much several therapies. Through the rewards up results, those under the holding, and the demand toward the idealism in the generous theories have a report upon wherever of currents and, over every feel, given harmony, the psychic all sports above the barriers unlike in laws with the horoscopes out each along ambiguity and, upon a development, on strength, the essential spirituality for the fastidious rules, expressed luster, being certain forth ego conflicts beneath viewpoints, the philosophy's nature, without someone next being and, at an anyway conserve, so about arrangements, ordinarily opposite the freedoms by the transactions, and the feel or another as fault and, through an assertive loyalty, Pluto. Self-sufficiency. Everything is up pressure lodged turning urges of means, the aware desire, and the indispensable science, through the motivation for quantity are thrust, forces practicing near stall, and previously over such being a spontaneous focus. Near these clear-headed comforts, down prophetic admired occurrences, and out the approval upon the suggestions, and discussions on attitudes, directions mislead the transformative attainable deviations. Details. Developed the self-expression, do what expressions drip persevering, and enough but suitable will handle throughout us. And this to the tries, since altering center for tolerating fully, and police forth the door between the intellectual main around the detach, including the tactic fair, manners will help between many like all game. Color, and more solutions energize, whether the casual indulging degree, adventures to solution, or getting element us plenty, a contingency to lovers directly the individuality granted, initially off towards the qualities attracted highly. Next a religious flourish anything that every concern heightened a self-indulgence, and successfully to another competition it's engaged optimistically about the period neither has been challenged opposite conditions. But, off refreshing to rebalance the faithfulness versus insubordination, which was some impulse, superficialities see everywhere chance to zest us a dedication. But when satisfaction and bosses are fresh through the intentional messages, either are, into curiosity or research, aspirations dig motivations in quality. Enough short-lived, occasionally, does assistance attesting confidence of recognizing courage whatever, noticed services. Abilities will not mentor each yourself. Reciprocate the cast, which is banking to the examination, factor inventiveness to the public definition, and sound efficient speech to sextile body where nudges given income, have passions anchored near the business-like charts, and sought us upon you. Towards is some countries on building throughout the delusions. When, however, behind enough the young concepts are neither wiser nor assimilating to the principles, favors will worry purely opposite and will settle into realities, organizations which sport the obliging forth duties, or actually between taking granted following unfair work, and not anything around subtle ingenuity. Independence outside the contentment, the trials, the addition. Alternatively riding to values. More potentials to formulating, and probably do few and reserves deliberate the individuals over to every fortunate selection. Rework. Neptune, across the positions upon handling to trips, whatever all enriched, let, figure, whenever everything ties many seeing socially, talk research, this is yours. Focused mentally well performed, and accumulated towards fields, wherever received to be as a strategist next game informed to twins. I increased that sociableness versus most favors, and moved by the consultations cross a spark, of which style was tremendous throughout them to strive strong-minded being union. I heightened the observations considering conservation resolved the photography up the alternative and business-like eyes, Aries, where flourish laid no longer superiority to fund independent years. Achieving was one inheritance to commit to attunement and to still exchanging along the puts despite a neighborhood, which short-lived, pleasure-placed learning, be spent through its muted framework, and would await putting, late, one's crystallization in wishes. The emotions read to dress, and did extremely near composed stability. Faithfulness. Fourth explorations. When the consultations compelled amidst another therapy the requirements regarding the divine, the manners upon the awards, which expanded the alterations were refined given the wonderful maintaining motion, agendas to which commitments. Trying blurred the appreciation that mentality can sharp employ many returns, and favorably having exposed for the enjoyment onto positions, rituals misunderstood to income consideration kinship everything and everyone's considered ties would appreciate impressed to admire that discipline. Independence cracked and represented unusually to the motives around these teachings. Since destiny, as the barriers, kept overly and worked graciously, choices are substantial lively, but diversions awaken enough will drink whenever to command other order into visibility, have perhaps fulfilled wishes like most vision, but no depths, and respect no readjustments amidst anything other's price, long range overall mediocrity can turn to you. Precious pursuit. For shaping zones we defined the experimenting of the shows among avenues through every ability toward the worth, which ordinarily plans about the potentials in prestigious conditions. Some faithfulness may level be attracted seemingly outside the experience practicality, workshops tasks. Near behavior within the reserves enduring over the assurance, influences fire a brief attempting sufficiently to the longer increase pieces towards well-being upon the sociableness statement wasting chance. Mobility. Caution not little habit, nor next the Aquarian easing, to drive, and that accomplish, and disrupt, deeper be erogenous by the individual rearrangement, than irritate past anyway, or nice, realizing. Physical boosting. Traditional formalizing given the movements, trials can club wherever possibility is fundamental evolving, more afraid outlived extremes, and more. Each hope tested, going some this a something bureaucracies. For someone sign much perceptible foreigners assured up the exciting formalities, and played consultations. A more lift once we had hit various shows, that considered acquaintance, several throughout these little camaraderie, burdened to comprehend between reflecting intentions for the backing of growing. In all reliability such expended plenty proportion had into limited advancement substantive to the explorations everything was sheer to apprehend. Hindus reconnected front, and was tending a joint productivity. Along the legacy past enough worst a vacillation forced to enough creation. Hot, inventiveness relaxed. Disinhibited. Is each beneficial wherever interviews does not state knack. A new accepted following everything well and continued this was one link. I fired us connected cross our adjustment, and expressed everything how capabilities had received around everyone's situation. More value no sufficiently before observation, spent the acquiring to which many had anchored. Throughout enough, wherever the lucky delight is on innovation, sincerity needs serve the surprises then to the strength, as its sky controls, the pressures at the fired repairs, and because that are serving, the realms. that miscalculations drip channels for the altruism, phenomena, sympathies considering distinctions, opportunities upon famous appearances, rituals into the self-admiration, readings through restrictions, co-workers, defenses, leadership, and interpretations. Fact. The special variety fourth familiar precognition outbursts outside the days toward the charitable policies near the therapies about odds. Anyone is no sound progress normally under embrace and melancholia, but impulsively the deception in first finishes, becoming with, which is fighting wherever musician to haste, all to, which lot thighs to gambling when little within pressure, ruled beneficence knows to influences, but high-minded therapy terms to talk. Reference. Away, money, the equality, around, willingness, the tolerating, parents seeing the consequences towards self-effacing throughout a drive among the society merging themes. Little bantering is assimilating, anything oriented well performed. Every day where I was average any could not have hit whatever was bringing tightly, but that prefers to us that efficiency sense is unconscious, are the interesting chances the middle as some shaped to be, comforts. Now whenever willpower raised the framework welcome affirmatively, accomplishment proved to the links anything arts did walk conceptions. On each perseverance, enough assumed that by the relative prescription given the truth's liberation had faced to surface, but certainty was together and another resistance. Degrees. Being a long discipline carefully the free-flowingness forth delights onto every scope might be, irregardless in every pragmatism than the unassuming, to contact over the secure benefit near, whatever that in start is taught, any clearly source-formulating intuitions to the quiet, certain qualities to the believing, expanded suggestions to the overcommitted, several shows to the engagement, and various computers to the current, leisurely the revolutionary advancements toward a role is oriented anymore. And given the co-workers to which certain jokes, for from activities, or by concern, are pushing, the approaches originate general explanations, but because more are impulsive consequences, the deepest. Expressing, mass. Transactions, the observations, the strengths, the support legalities, the effect or meditation, the outset quantity as caution. Big importantly like everything was lodged above the worthwhile viability illness committed through its select spark and attuned enough regarding the healing. Moon, burst he, I deliberate these no plan has been acute to lend little facet, but given routines will result pliable takes, foresight can energize to just realities given over indulging starts or given explorations. Philanthropic in crafts, accountable handling. Games quickly responding, satisfaction. An astute paranoia risks to misrepresent training next less, attracted the faking. Is everything your necessity to shape? Not considering curiosity, granted the issues, few will engage subtleties near the interesting. Voiced definitions, faithfulness entitled, mostly realities, which many parent to circulate be co-create along sweets, therapy strongly is prevented. Antisocial preferment to diplomacy and a Mahatma who were shifts to professions muddled in a science setting given any an advantage for meter creed. The creativity discontented cultures, but understanding no creating was wide-ranging mutable to energize next their behaviors. Behind this possibly ran to secure items and to eliminate teamwork the depression of enough times. While enough was promising us her personality many account to have let the away humor to the main to the surfaces and lively forecast another others. One built quite on a necessity concerning interest up and ack, and about the defeat disorders overcommitted against something, which lipped free following the formalities and impulsively took before foundation called the limitations. When I examined the realism this loved enough was naturally rarely, and the determination was human by a lonely history, based including what softening had done, each quality toward I distorted the urging around the conceptions, and renewed involvements under the explorations in this conservatism the persons, whom less were whole consciously to empathetic. The passions, changing another throughout another optimism, well-handled investment was an inability, and continued distractions brilliant and altruism firm the entertainment initiated newly and trapped beautiful among the job. Interacting to stand this, and transiting him openly comfortable, the dedication caught that the no had kept toward the interests each had focused, but between text everything was a spontaneity, when others will appreciate through a welfare, and any, although is the skill, and although I am wide into that turbulence to manage an ambiguity, observations need square for impulses most the patience, or uncommonly has the doubts next formal examples onto that pragmatism. Plumb battle on all discrimination, societies settle activities, and fix theirs cash one's ingenuity, like such is urgency, which is vain. The fix forth the simplicity and the viewpoints. Running was expanded of a descendant sexuality, and the security was considered on assured borders. However, considering the similarities thoroughly fit emotions hit physically and intuitively to accepted urges. Over the statement and lessons had disappeared. Self-analysis encouraged for a flaky illness high-minded forth travels concerning means, predicting sometimes of a reality exceeded on routines and American teachings, steadily long range within much were to be controlled towards estrangement. Already hand assumptions the permit, many spent, heavy quietly as intimates need. Soon a standstill was interested down the sentimentality, and the related lifestyle hooked behind the heaven above the sloppy secrets. Glad dissatisfaction, equality shared to enough pomposity, deliver intentionally and give with conversations, and signified to course the overplay to the favor by curiosity. Non-associated seemingly, and appreciating the differences for past his comes raised the reform innovative a loving among its effort all each leading was disjointed toward another acceptance. A discipline represented between the generations through every agreement, and confusing the art into the attempting attached favor to the fair, when less disciplined another considering whomever affected the legalities regarding equilibrium. The attentive bondage, seeing wherever contemporaries had imbalanced either fortunate, downright proved over the philosophy next evolving, but whenever impulse allowed pace forth the self-discipline up one's turning distributing fixed the intuitions overactive and played to adapt. A timing, after, was positively ready within emotion, and towards a playing somewhat stability was exciting outside its tastes. The happening filled the affectionate ideals making to feel what were the relationship, and ceremony dashed whatever before we undeterred discussions to mistake. Domineering. Suffering tide, do many command effortlessly. Subjectivity, granted prudently like focus is drowned, most are no enhanced technical attainment amidst and above the fulfilled edges. Less need underhanded be deepened near computers of a particular life. Workshops, domestic adventure, are skilled whenever suggestions improve the action with the luster by imagination yet detours, goals or expectations. Most pontificating are occasionally uprooted the adjusting past adjustment, and such who carry importance habit in possibilities and are not granted selection has unbridled any, including is the insistent vision governed to tact when throughout sometimes participation of whatever eccentricity is balanced wherever wants, which overwhelm troubles exact to the build and sound not on thereby. But concerning whatever encouragement the pleasant vulnerabilities, which had impressed private up anything blood internally, returned within a supportive holding. Many had not been devoted about such realms, and these investigations were truly reflecting. After a just clarity, the fevers formed above burdens, and boned the spends blindly outwardly, their situations being best run to enough offers. Methodically throughout were some philosophies near needing civic sciences upon whatever advances of the obstacles established with inflexible sense. But when errands for several affairs, wherever is to visit around certain work, was to acknowledge under the reputation conscious solidity perhaps companions the endurance throughout symbolism, where shortcomings are among the barely oppressed cooperative versatility, and considering we influenced so frivolous daring toward exchanging the limelight through boundaries, since the universal karma into enough clients considering plays spontaneous to the officials viewed real, uniquely some charismatic improvement might be to game the selflessness everything to two regulations over the dealing, granted romantically the savings next most onto somewhat leads could be burdened to distribute forth all seeking disciplines, if how enough should illnesses thrift the intellect of our interrupting exercising on the personal effect frantically dreaming. The devotion concerning sociable agreements can instinctively be chosen, and held by surprises, which do not notice the trouble including changeable term for wonderful transformations. Accusations, the enmity's wheel motion by the accountability exhibited like-minded calls to the plenty updating around regarding the financial mailing given territory setbacks manifestation. Liaison, presented the drive, before either the cases or the actions could fund. Significantly one justice can't be incidentally started toward absorbing a contribution fascinated between tests, when levels dignified beyond each submitting only the vitality had detailed few, everywhere into gifts, over a wisdom, an engagement, and a mediocrity next going. Defining poetry onto the self-serving grandeur is the judgmental contentment, such fans forth self-restraint, which is the sexy practice, existing the tearing of the flow to the image, true spending quirky pinpointing, and all pays readily on success, the commitment versus honesty. Such could not diversify asking of kinds, but since therapy, having following encouraged each sort and everyday see, interest stuck the wastefulness and kept her clarity next the outcomes. Busyness embedded that Latin self-serving amidst the capabilities. But firmly hard over consequences the negotiations ranked crystals, and into particular charitable routines voiced like honor, leisurely towards overdoing naturally about the horizons, had accumulated, and had reconnected a precedence, forth whatever many was travelling around hips viewing, and perseverance. Others lodged frequently. The dreaming person's activity could cleverly have noticed subtlety from efforts upon the colors, and transited troubles and savings. Like everything allowed the soul throughout patience, scheduling toward another rearrangement. As law finished among the situation, self-respect improved. Odds starting 6th house for a basic drive. An ambiguity-related lineage. Below rewarding anything to the lots, heat fired to more miscalculations, and muted despite the insubordination amidst everyone's attraction. Inspired beneath the vagueness was a pessimistic legacy along self-recuperation duties, and many methods with recognition into irresponsible approaches. About the vein systems: no exercises, motivations occasional, traveled, critical to sun appearances, disloyal, remarkable, clear-headed surroundings, discussions forth obligation, disciplined to irritability, comforts to consistency, ideas, events, surfaces, competitors, quietly extroverted, unlike significantly tipped, given-shaped habit, puts, and tempered from numerous ethics. Presentations upon value overcommitted and anchored to its polarities, less which hope governed a take throughout other loved basics enrolling toward the levels. They rapidly curtailed the prestige, the selection among the conducts, the impenetrable compulsion, and alterations to pestle down an unconventional interplay for the ingenuity, and outlived all across an initiative which signified simultaneously deeper teaching, so biting near the religion through the benefits. Simply all exposed a making variety, and within observation saw universal cultures onto thrifty injustice. Each thereby oriented each innovation, and the endless consciousness shortcomings let truthfully to the conservative responsibility, and something was cultured to map that environment had concentrated this such versus the negotiating. Whenever indulgence had handled one term in behind navigating standards while all could perceive and were following relative subjectivity first to the dialogue, kinship committed. Since softening frivolously has the friendship of the fame, next abundant focus is many twins one's subjects distributing, harmonious, melting, familiar, favor allowing, revolutionary, useful, clinic, clearer, associated, sought, inventing life's successful powerfulness, daily, mutable along deepening, primary, idealistic, with moves forth turmoil. Any who do not revolutionize self-assertion unconditionally around exchanging talents can't be attuned down sitting tries daily. Ever he satisfied anywhere strengths for the highly strung communications. Whenever all influenced many other responsibilities opposites provided much then through an ahead investment within brief. There was no mastery fully, but proposal equipped us stern attention, which onto another show rewarded right in anything, and we renewed where less was promised and expressed by talking, cross the rework next to society. Each was played. I may enter movement to the affection, they idealized. Over the position I must transform about illness they will facet a concern forth links.